us, and they gave us a report from their mission work to folks in Bangladesh. Even though they are here in the States, they're still able to minister to the folks in Bangladesh. So it was good to hear from our mission couple that we have been supporting for many years. But today we're going to have a mission report as well, not from missionaries that we support, but from our own mission team that we sent out from our church, and we're excited to hear about their time that they spent in Alaska. They've prepared a PowerPoint slideshow to give us some idea of what things were like there. So we're going to watch that, and then after that, the mission team will come and present to us what they did while they were in Alaska.
Alaska is just beautiful. It's amazing to see. You just see God everywhere. I mean, it was just you're in awe the whole time, and it was an amazing trip. And I was very, very blessed to be able to do all of this alongside my family, and we really had a great time. So I'm going to pass it over to Brady. You're all right. Just he was been very nervous about this. Go. Yes, you can. Go. Come on. Just breathe. All you gotta do is this. You're fine. Come on. Yes, pretend they're not here. You're just talking to me.
Alaska.
Come on. Just do it. We're not moving on until you do, so get it over with. They're going to be staring at you until you say it, so hurry up.
Alaska was awesome. While I was there, I helped cut wood, scraped and painted a warehouse, and cut and hauled away brush. Seeing all the moose was my favorite part. Thank you for supporting all of us on this trip.
I really enjoyed going to Alaska, and the mountains were amazing. That was probably one of my favorite parts, was seeing the mountains and the still lake. I loved being able to help them out by painting, clearing debris, housekeeping, and other stuff that were like daily tasks, and seeing what they do around there. And my favorite thing was probably hiking to Teepee Ridge and having our Bible study. I thank God for letting me be a part of this trip and serving Him.
I spent most of my time running equipment, building up lagoon ponds, the walls around there, taking fence down with Jonathan, putting it back up. We spent a lot of time looking for tools. They weren't very organized, but did some slope work behind some cabins, and my favorite part was probably, besides the scenery, getting to know everybody. Jonathan, Janelle are awesome workers. Rachel's a hoot. Thank you guys for stepping up and leading us there. I appreciate that. And Nicole's Nicole, always a good time. So I just thank you all, and it was amazing.
Jonathan, come on up, bud. The hoodie was appropriate in Alaska. I'm not sure about today, but I have one just like it.
Okay. Well, I just did a lot of odd and end jobs. Mainly, I started off dismantling a fence, and then demoed a roof for a woodshed. Tuesday, started off digging around a building. A lot of brush had built up around. Cleaned off the roof, and I think that was about it for that day. Wednesday, what did I do Wednesday? I think Wednesday I started off finishing off digging around the building, and I think that was about it for that day. I don't remember a whole lot, but Thursday, what did I do Thursday? Yeah, probably. Well, I would say that was a lot of the stuff I did. So I probably forgot a few things, but I would say the main thing I learned along the trip was just to trust God and His plans, because didn't really know what we were going to do when we got there, but we stayed busy for the most part. I just wanted to thank all you guys for your prayers and support. I think that's about it.
Okay, Janelle, come on up.
So today I'm supposed to tell you about Alaska. I wrote down 2 different speeches and I read them this morning and I was like, they sound so dry. So I'm not going to read them off and hopefully I don't fail at this. you saw a lot of the tasks we did. Some of them are hard to remember because they're just little snippets of time. Some of them took an hour, some 3 hours, but we did a lot of odd jobs. And that was kind of actually hard for me. I got a hard time getting excited to go to Alaska because I was like, are we going to even be impactful? Sorry, I'm getting teary-eyed mostly because I'm nervous. I was worried about not doing much, but we stayed really busy. I figured that I worked maybe 5 to 7 hours a day. Some of our team worked a lot more than that. So between our team, we probably did somewhere between 250 and maybe up to 400 hours of work for this camp. So the staff that they have on hand who could eventually get to those jobs probably would have taken them months, if not all year. Things like painting the building might not have gotten done this year, just because they need volunteers to come up and get those odd jobs done, because they don't have people there who can have the free time to do that. I was talking to Rachel at one point, and I said, she helped me to realize, it's kind of like the church. We don't always realize what part of the church we are. Sorry. There's a passage in 1 Corinthians that talks about being the hand and the foot. And just because you're not doing the part that you think is most impactful doesn't mean you're not being a part of the body. So just because I was doing odd jobs and wasn't ministering to the campers directly doesn't mean that I wasn't having an impact on their lives by helping to keep the camp running. So yeah, that was just really exciting to see that, to have that realization that I was being impactful to all the campers and all of the people who come through the camp, even the parents and the next group of workers. They all get to see how that camp is run. And obviously that was an impact on me to see the way that that church or that camp works together, to just have an impact on those lives. Like they were saying, all the beds were full. I think they said somewhere like around 300 people were at that camp this week. That is a lot of people. The sign up there said like something like 300,000 campers, I think, have been through that camp. So just an enormous amount of people have been impacted by that camp, and now I got to be a little part of that. So that's just really exciting. The workers there are just really amazing. You see them getting up early, and they work far longer than we did. You know, after we were done at supper time, and you would see them continue on throughout the rest of the evening, pretty much until they go to bed. It's just their life, you know. For that 7-8 weeks, I'm sure they prep, you know, a whole lot during the winter. I think they even have, you know, I know they do a lot through the winter too, but so yeah, just really cool to see all the workers there and the staff there, and just how dedicated they are to spread the love of God.
Rachel, you want to come up and share?
Like Janelle, I don't know what I'm going to say. So before this trip, it was about 3:30 in the afternoon on Friday, and I was packing to leave at 6:30. It was Friday night. And I was talking to a friend on the phone, and she said, "What can I pray for specifically for you on this trip?" I was like, "I don't know why I'm going." What made me think it was a good idea to leave 5 kids home with my husband for a week and gallivant all across to Alaska and spend time doing this? Like, what made me think that was a good idea? And she said, because you can. Because your kids are old enough, you can. And it was neat to be able to go. And I owe a lot of that to Tim and his support, so thank you for that. The thing about a week-long missions trip with your church is that you get to spend a lot of time with your team members. You get to know them in a setting outside the church building. You see them in a different light where plans change frequently, questions go unanswered, stress builds, and there's physical exhaustion. You begin to notice things, and you soon realize who needs their morning coffee, who wants hot chocolate all day, who can make an Aquafina water bottle last an entire week, just refilling it over and over and over again. You notice who snores, who can't sleep through snoring, who jokes all the time, who likes to be serious. But you also notice important things like who volunteers to be up at 5 a.m. so other people don't have to. You notice who stays in the back on a hike to encourage people who can't keep up. You notice who has all the energy in the world and who puts it to use all day long getting manual labor accomplished and with a smile on their face. That was one of the favorite parts of this trip, was getting to know people in a different light like that. I walked away with a fondness for them and appreciation for their strengths, and I'm glad I got to bring them back with me, and we get to see that here too. My main thing when I was there was I was kitchen duty during lunchtime. I would go down at 10 o'clock in the morning and start preparing lunch right after breakfast was done. This was a job I did in college when I was at Cedarville. I was a cook's helper, and that was pretty much exactly what I was doing here. So I got to do things like I did at home. I got to cut up stuff for salads, and I got to make cornbread, but this cornbread was unlike any cornbread I've ever made before because it was not for 7 people, it was for 250. So that was kind of fun to do and be able to say that I've done. But it was also neat to be able to meet the people in the kitchen and get to know them better, and just every single one of them touched our lives in a special way, and it was impactful. And I think everybody else pretty much covered this, that it was just a bunch of random jobs that added up to make a difference, and it was really cool to be in the background serving so that other people could serve well.
Okay, and Jane. I have my page. You're going to sing? Oh,
Although, you know me, I do like to sing. So the North to Alaska song and the Victory in Jesus song kept going back and forth in my mind all week. But anyway, so I have my paper. But you know what the jobs were, and I did some of them. And I also worked in the kitchen. But one of the things that impacted, there were 2 things that impacted me were reading the scripture that was on the door and around in the building. So up by the clock, it said, "My times are in your hands," Psalm 31:15. And the front door, on the door of the ladies' bathroom, "Rooted and grounded in love," Ephesians 5:17. And these 3 remain: faith, hope, love, but the greatest of these is love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. That was in the girls' bathroom on in a framed piece. And then on the mirror itself, "I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain," Psalm 3:4. And also, "She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future," Proverbs 31:25. So anyway, in the morning, I spent a lot of time in the main lodge. But the other thing was that I enjoyed the work outside, and Alan Morgan was our maintenance guy, and he'd come around in a four-wheel, what do you call those? Anyway. Four-wheeler, sorry. And he would come and check on us. But what I always appreciated, he would be telling you something, telling you a story, telling you what to do next, telling you something, but he would stop, and he would be looking at the scenery, the mountains, and appreciating all that was there. And I guess it just helped me remember his appreciation and his thankfulness. He grew up in that area, and so he knew what he was looking at. He looked at it for many parts of his life, but he always remembered to look up. Sometimes we get so busy in the jobs that we're doing, we forget to look up and see God and see what he is and his majesty. And I guess that is what one of the things I remember and learn is the importance of taking time for my view of God, that the mountains were quite the view, and to continue to grow in the view of God that I have through reading His Word and seeing who He is in His Word, and remembering that He's the Creator, the Judge, and the Savior.
You know, as you've listened to them, you can kind of see a twofold impact of this trip. You can see the impact in the service that they did to the staff and to the facilities there at Victory Bible Camp. But you can also see the impact that just the relationships that were built, the interaction within the group, what a bonding time that was. And so much to praise God about, so much to be thankful for during that trip. Just to kind of back up and fill in some gaps a little bit, as we arrived, the camp has a new director. He hasn't been there quite a year yet. This is his first summer there, and so when campers started arriving on Sunday, this was kind of the first wave for him and his staff. So they had a lot of things going on with the arrival of all of those campers. But at the same time, they were always very willing to take time for us to try to point us in the right direction. Again, they're trying to manage and oversee a lot of things going on at one time, and they wanted to be attentive to us. But again, they had a lot on their plate to start the summer with. So typically, our day would begin, and we would some would get up earlier than others, depending on kitchen duty or how necessary your coffee fix needed to be. But you could go down to the lodge and start the day. We began at 8 o'clock with devotions. They had a little conference room there in the lodge that we would go to, and began at 8 o'clock with devotions. And the devotion was focused on 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Their theme for this summer was the resurrection. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul is writing to the church at Corinth in regard to their concern, their questions about the resurrection. And so our devotion focused on the significance and the value of the resurrection and what that means to the gospel and what it means to our relationship with God and what He's done for us in that aspect. So our morning started with a short devotion from 1 Corinthians chapter 15. As soon as the devotion was over, Alan, who was the maintenance supervisor, usually came to our devotion. He would come in, sit with us, and then we would talk about activities for that day. And so we'd talked the night before usually and had a game plan, and then that next morning he would change it. He would have something else that he had thought of, and so we would go over then kind of what activities and events and jobs that needed to be done for that day. So we kind of clarified where people would be going initially. Following that, then, we would go downstairs. We tried to have our breakfast eaten and out of the way by the time the campers came so that we could get to work. So we would, by 8:15 or 8:30ish, we would be downstairs in the main lodge in the cafeteria, have our breakfast. And they fed us very well. 3 meals a day. The food was very, very good. So we would have breakfast, and then we would scatter, depending on what jobs and opportunities we were directed to do. A lot of the jobs, as they described, weren't glorious, look-at-me type of jobs. The tire barns were a dirty, filthy mess. And the ladies did a great job of sorting through all of those tires. The brush work, just the mowing, just a lot of what would seem menial type tasks, but these were all tasks that their staff then didn't have to do, that allowed them to focus on their purpose and their goal of ministering to the campers that were there. So again, not not really high-profile type of jobs, but all very meaningful and very necessary type of activities. We'd work until noon. We would come in, have lunch there in the lodge again, and then slip back out for the afternoon. The weather while we were there was very pleasant in Alaska standards. The mornings were low 40s. We dipped into the 30s, 1 or 2, I think, but low 40s, cloudy, clear, on and off during the course of the day. And by the way, the day never ended. It was never dark. It kind of got dim in the middle of the night, but it really never got dark. So curtains over the windows so you could sleep was kind of necessary. Some wore little mask thingies that kept the light out, but it never really got dark. But anyway, it never really warmed up either. So upper 50s, so low 40s to mid to upper 50s was kind of the range of temperature. Sweatshirt, a hoodie like Jonathan had on usually was good. It rained on the last day. I'm surprised Brady didn't mention this. The last day of work, Friday, our first project was to clear a trail that had a rock slide that had come down and had made it somewhat impassable for some of their vehicles to take wood to their fireside chat area. So we had a rock throwing contest off of the mountain. Now, I think they waited till Friday so that the campers were not in that area so that we didn't hurt or hit anybody. But we were throwing rocks off the mountain. That's kind of fun. But it rained that morning on us a little bit. But that kind of gives you a glimpse of our activities. In the evenings, then dinner, we usually ate after the camper, so we would eat later, 6:30, 7 o'clock would be about the time we'd make it in to the cafeteria for dinner. Sit around and talk and visit. And again, an opportunity to interact. That's when most of the staff came in to eat. And so we got to mingle with the staff. Somebody mentioned Alan Yoder, their new auto mechanic. Alan grew up, or David, I'm sorry, David Yoder. David grew up in Leesburg. We were talking to him, and so, you guys are from Indiana? Yeah, northern Indiana. So we found out he's from Leesburg. You know, what are the chances of running into somebody in Alaska, Glacier View, that came from Leesburg? So it was kind of a neat connection there, so that we got a chance to visit with him about that. Again, the camp has been in operation according to our T-shirts. They celebrated their 75th anniversary last year. So they've been doing this camp for a number of years, and it really is an amazing location. It sits in a little valley in a much bigger valley. And they talked about, we walked to TP Ridge for our devotion one night. We actually hiked out of our little valley up, and when they say up, it was up. You had to trudge up this hill, mountain, and then we were on the ridge that looked down into the much bigger valley with the river. And what a glorious place to have a devotion to celebrate God's creation. Just an amazing view. So one of the unique opportunities that we had there. I'm surprised nobody mentioned Gus. Gus was our neighborhood moose. And they warned us when we arrived there. They said, in this area, they have all kinds of wildlife. Grizzly bears, black bears, moose. And they said, of all the critters to be careful of, you got to watch the moose. The moose are typically docile, but if provoked or threatened, they can become very dangerous. And in fact, they're probably more of a threat than the bears. The bears tend to, and by the way, we never did see any bears other than the one on the wall in the lodge, and it wasn't moving. But there were moose. We saw moose almost every day, And we fondly nicknamed one who was kind of hanging around our cabins as Gus. So every day we kind of looked for Gus, see where he was at, and he was usually wandering around there someplace close. In fact, one afternoon, after lunch, one of our jobs was to go back and put up the fence that David tore down earlier in the week so that we could enclose off the lagoon. We arrived to put the fence up, and there was Gus standing at the corner post, just kind of hanging out. And we're going, well, we really can't go put up the fence with Gus. So we took a Gus break. We had to wait for Gus to wander off so we could finish putting up the fence to enclose it all. So some unique things that you normally don't have happening to you here in Mentone, Indiana. We had to kind of watch out for the moose. You saw a picture that some of them in the lake. Much to my disappointment, there were 2 girls and 2 boys went down to the lake to go swimming. And the water in the lake, you have to realize, as you're standing there, you're looking at the mountains, and they're all snow-covered white. So you can kind of guess the temperature of the water. It was a bit frigid, but nonetheless, they were going to go swimming. All right? And so they go down to the lake, they line up, and Brady and Jonathan and Janelle and Bailey, and all right, go! And the girls ran up, jumped in. The boys got to the water. That's too cold. They panicked. They froze. They didn't. It froze. The girls froze. The boys didn't even. It took the girls a little bit of time to get behind them to push them in, but we finally got the picture of them all in the lake. But the boys had to have some real encouragement. But the water was quite cold. Not something that you would do, I almost say on purpose, or at least I wouldn't do on purpose. But it was really nice to hear feedback from the staff as I interacted with different areas of staff and administration. Despite the fact that what we seemed to be doing were a lot of menial tasks, they all showed a great deal of appreciation for what we were doing. They were saying, what a big help. That, they've really did appreciate all the efforts and all the different things that we did. And again, felt that we had accomplished a great deal for them. And again, thinking back over the trip, our relationships within the group, how we connected, how we got to know each other on a different level, the service that we did for the camp. If you ever get an opportunity to participate in an event like this, a mission trip like this, I encourage you to do it. It is a blessing not only to those that you serve, but to yourself as well. And it was a tremendous week. We were fortunate, all of our travels went well, other than a few hiccups at O'Hare on the way back, and we were all in a small elevator trying to go up or down because we really weren't sure which way we were supposed to go. Other than that, we really did well, had no issues with our travels, and God truly blessed the whole group. And it was a true pleasure and an honor to serve with all of those who participated. So Matthew, for one last time, could we walk through will it play this time? We hope. And again, us before we left, and us, this is their entry sign going into the camp, and we took this on our way out. I know that sign looks like we left from Toronto. That's not true. We really did leave from Chicago. And the airplane ride. Some people were excited to touch ground again after their first airplane ride. We traveled down to the river the first night for our dinner, and we rode in the back of a pickup. Something you don't get to do much of around here anymore. It's kind of frowned upon, but they bounce you all over the place in back of pickups. One of our trucks, we had to roll the window down so you could hold your arm out to hold the door closed because it didn't stay shut. So when you were driving, you're just kind of holding the door shut. The river was actually kind of a milky color because of all the stone and the sand there. So it wasn't real pristine at that part, but and then again, a variety of our jobs here. The tire bar, someone had donated and kept giving them all of these tires, and they were useful tires, most of them, but not all of them. But they just kept throwing them in this Quonset hut, and nobody knew what was in it, and were not sure what they really had. So actually organizing that really helped a lot. And again, work in the kitchen when you're feeding 300 campers and staff is an everyday endeavor of Janelle specifically asked to weed eat down by the lake one afternoon, and therein lies the green pant legs. But she had an opportunity to weed eat in a location like she's never weed eated before. David operated, because of his particular skill sets, he operated one of their backhoes and excavators and did some landscaping and again, this was the rock slide area where we were clearing the trail and managed to make it passable again for their four-wheeler and cart. The older warehouse building that was yellow and faded and kind of covered with debris, we cleared around, and cleaned off, scraped it, and painted. I don't know if we have a picture of that. We had to carry a lot of brush, and a fair amount of work was done on the warehouse. It went from yellow to green. Now, unfortunately, we only had enough paint to do half of it, but we painted the two sides that you could see from the road, so everybody thought we finished it. They had a cargo trailer that needed some cleaning out. We had Bailey and Brandy and Brady painted the inside of the trailer to clean it up and make it more usable. And then, yes, the paint storage area required a lot of organizing and different things that so that they could know what they had. And then this was at the Alpine facility. Jonathan and Janelle helped Dennis with that.
Cross between the landing and another board that it was on. Once you get that ladder to the middle, it bounced a little. That was fun.
So that's why Jonathan had you do that? And then our different times, we actually, the ladies stayed in a house that was being lived in by part of the staff. They moved out when we came for the week. So the ladies were in a house. The guys, we actually kind of drew the short straw. We were in what was called a dry cabin, which meant there was an outhouse down the hill that we got to use. There was no water in our cabin. We did have a little electricity, but our facility was somewhat more primitive than but the gals let us come and use their shower occasionally. I think once we started smelling to a point, they said, okay, you can come. So they allowed us. And Jonathan's reaction to some of our food, he liked some more than others, I think. And we actually had some quiet, peaceful times. Their facility where they call the ranch, an equestrian program, the director was sharing with me that is always completely full. They have 30 kids right now on a waiting list to try to get into to their equestrian camp. They just don't have enough horses. And this was at Inspiration Point. This is where the original purchasers of the campground area came and viewed the area and said, yes, this is where we want to invest. And so this is called Inspiration Point. And yes, that is not Gus on the far right. Gus would probably be there in the middle. That's more, and do you know how big moose are? They're big animals. And yes, the swimming opportunity here. And again, this was at TP Ridge for our evening Bible study. And again, we were on the ridge out of our little valley looking into the bigger valley where, and I forget the name of the river that runs through there. That was Stephen who was leading our devotion. He was, the sign on the right was actually on the road that we took going to the glacier. You know, it kind of gets your attention when you're driving along and the signs that you keep seeing say, danger, road unsafe, you know, no trespassing. It makes you kind of wonder, where are you really going? But nonetheless, we managed to make it there. And the glacier, as was pointed out, was a pretty awesome event. We had a guide whose husband actually is on staff at the camp. She works as a guide part-time. She actually works at the camp as well, some. But, and that's her, Chelsea, on the left. She led us through the glacier and brought us all back safely. So she did her job well. And she explained a lot about the glacier, how it's formed, and some of the different attributes of the glacier. We had to be fully attired with helmets, and we got to wear little spiky things on our shoes so that, because we were walking on ice for the most part. And this is a video clip, but we'll just bypass it, Matthew. And again, on the far right is Stephen, who led our devotions. The picture on your left, Alan Morgan was the gentleman who was the maintenance supervisor. He's the one closest to you. And then Dennis, kind of his right-hand man, is in the green hat. David Yoder, the auto mechanic from Leesburg, is there in the middle. And I don't know who it was Caleb. Caleb on the left. Caleb was also in the maintenance department. This was one afternoon we took a little break. And then the kitchen people, Jane, who's on the left? The left is Isaac. And then the one in the pink is Nicole. And then Barb and then Eric. Okay. And Jonathan is forever trying to pick up girls. These were a couple of his favorite targets. These were actually, I believe, the daughters of Janae. And a lot of little kids. We don't have the slide. The program director we met one afternoon, he was on his four-wheeler with his family. He had a wooden box on the front of it with holes cut out in the front for their legs. So he had two twin girls, probably 2 years old maybe, if that. So two girls on the little box on the front. He had a toddler boy straddled in front of him. And then his wife sat behind him, and their daughter on her right and their son on their left. There were 5 of them on this little four-wheeler. 7. Well, 5 kids. Yeah, do the math. 7. But there were 7 of them on the four-wheeler just cruising through. He was checking out what was going on. They know how to get around and did well. The scenery was always amazing, as pointed out. Mountains, every direction you look, and just very, very majestic. It's truly hard to ignore the glory of God when you're in that kind of a location. And you know what? I just realized what time it is. We kept talking, so I'll quit. We'll let this run through. And Pastor Tim? Todd. Oh, yes, we have a song.